Hardware and closed captioning for Idaho in Session is provided by the Idaho Legislature and Idaho Legislative Services Office. Additional funding is provided by the Idaho Public Television Endowment.
Call the Senate Health and Welfare Committee to order at this time. We will ask our secretary to take a silent roll for us right now. And committee, we have one item on our agenda today, and we'll get started on that. So we have House Bill 243. Representative Furness, welcome to the committee. Please give your name, and then the time is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Rod Furness, District 31. That's Jefferson, Fremont, Clark, and Lemhi counties. It's an honor to be here today to talk to you about House Bill 243. Millions of Americans are joining the workforce as the Trump administration policies fuel strong economic growth and low unemployment rates. Idaho has always been Doge. It's my new favorite word. And Idaho is the most deregulated state in the nation, thanks to the gentleman on the second floor and this good body. 243 continues the Idaho tradition of making it easier for people to start and run a business, especially a daycare business. I was raised in a home of a babysitter. Sybil Morris pretty much raised me from Louisville, Idaho. I'm sure the best day of her life was when my mom said I didn't need to go back. My mom was a nurse and my dad was a farmhand, so sometimes I would stay long hours with Sybil. She was wonderful. Idaho is built on small businesses, and perhaps the most important small business is the home-centered daycare where moms can stay home and supplement the household income and watch a few kids. House Bill 243 helps providers the Idaho way by reducing onerous regulations and helping parents and students find affordable daycare. There's a child care crisis in Idaho. The number of eligible Idaho children in licensed child care has dropped 20% since 2015, 13% in 2022. During the same time, the number of child care providers has dropped over 10%. And we spent way more money, 2.5 times more money for child care. Fewer kids, fewer providers, and more money. Clearly, more money and subsidies aren't solving the problem. Child care, so what is? I would submit to you that H243 will help solve that problem by deregulating child care. It helps by freeing up the workforce and promoting stay-at-home moms at the same time by allowing small and large daycares to flourish. Utah actually noticed this as well, needing a workforce there. They lack workforce almost in every state. Utah's hit hard, probably maybe the hardest. They passed a bill last year that allows up to 8 children to stay at home and to be taken care of in a home. They require no visits, no regulation. Why is that, I wonder? And the answer is because they need more workforce. In Idaho, you can have 4 kids with no license unless you live in Boise. where you only get one kid, and then you pay some fees, and they get visited 4 times. And they get visited by health and welfare 2 more times. That's a little bit too much regulation. In fact, it's onerous. The loss of child care spots severely affects families seeking reliable care and their ability to maintain consistent employment. Roughly 40% of Idaho children lack access to child care without factoring in the high cost. 9 cities overregulate child care in Idaho currently. There were 11. Ammon and Lewiston recently stopped their child care regulations. It's estimated that over $478 million are lost annually in Idaho's economy due to child care, according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. Here's some interesting facts. Idaho loses $65 million annually in tax revenue due to child care issues. Absences and employee turnover cost Idaho employers at $414 million per year. More than 90% of parents rely on a family member for at least some child care. At least about 1/2 of parents reported missing work due to child care issues. 23% of parents postponed school or training due to child care issues. 31% of parents reported child care issues significantly impacted their employment over the last 12 months. 34% reported child care issues significantly impacted their classes or training programs over the last 12 months. 48% of parents said they lost more than 12 days of work due to child care issues. I know there's been some talk about ratios. I'm just going to address those briefly. The number of kids in a place of business. In-home care is equal to or less than 6. There's different categories or licenses. In-home care is less than 6. Group care is 7 to 12. Daycare centers are 13 plus. Because we have these bans, really less than 6 kids in an in-home is already pretty much capped, so it's 1 to 6. In the centers, if they're over, which is over 13, they can have a different ratio. But the bill says they have to have a ratio, they have to have that in-house, they have to decide the ratio, and they have to have it ready to be presented to parents. I would hope that we would trust our parents to know that if there was a 1 to 12 ratio for babies, they wouldn't leave their baby there. I would think that that would be significant. The feds currently, if there's a federal dollars going into daycare, they don't have a ratio either. They want the daycare center to set the ratio. I found it interesting on one phone call that I had where the daycare is a significant daycare, is a center. They were a 1 to 4. And I asked him why they're 1 to 4. He said because parents are willing to pay a little extra for a 1 to 4. It was market driven and parent driven, which is really the Idaho way. They also said that they were concerned about maybe if there wasn't a ratio that the insurance might be a problem. But if the insurance is asking what the ratio is, they can make their own ratio based on the insurance. They can say it's 1 to 4. Maybe they'll get a lower rate of insurance with that. I would hope that that would be a market-driven category as well. Idaho has always been market-driven. Idaho has always allowed parents to make choices. Let's not over-regulate child care. Health and welfare says they can handle this. They can take care of the children. They can make sure that they're adequately taken care of. And I would hope that we would go with that and do the market thing and the Idaho thing, the Idaho way. With that, I'd like to turn over a little bit of time to Kate Hawes to just go over any other portion of the bill.
Thank you, Representative. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name and then the time is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Kate Hawes with Kestrel West. I know we're a little bit short on time and we have quite the crowd today, so I will try and keep it brief. Just in walking through the bill, some of the high points, I will talk briefly about what the bill does and what is in the language. There are a lot of concerns that are not necessarily a part of the bill, so I want to make sure we address those. So the definition of supervision is being enhanced. The current definition of supervision that is in rule, there's nothing in code, so this is bringing it from rule to code and putting it in statute. It actually enhances it by making sure that it is active supervision being done. What it does is for a child of 5 years or younger, you must be within sight or normal hearing and near enough to render immediate assistance. So if you are within sight and hearing, a child could still be very, very far away from you. You can see them, you can hear them, but you're not close enough to give them assistance. This ensures that you are actively close to them, making sure that you can help them, but does not require you to have your eyes on them 100% of the time, which in a general sense is not what anyone expects. For children 5 years and older, the provider, the same thing, but the provider has to use a judgment call and make their supervision of the child appropriate for the child's age, needs, and capabilities. So the example that I would use is my own child. He is very good at, if something goes into the street, he knows how to look for cars. He knows what to do. He knows to stay on the sidewalk. One of his friends, that's not the case. He is not as confident. So we have an agreement that if the friend is outside, an adult has to be outside as well. It's a little bit of a different setting, but it's a good way for me to illustrate. We have adapted how we supervise the boys based on their capabilities and their needs. And so what this does is says to a provider, hey, use your judgment based on the children in your care, and you do what is appropriate for those children. Then, of course, if you are near water or off campus or any of those types of things, it is within sight and sound no matter how old the child is, making sure that you're with them at all times. There's a piece in here that is also important that folks don't talk about a lot. It's on page 3. If an applicant fails to complete their application within 6 months, it is considered abandoned. Currently, there's no time frame around how long you have to complete an application. And so this is in here. There was an individual where she started her application. It was a pretty arduous process. She had another opportunity, pursued that opportunity. It didn't pan out, so then she tried to come back to her application. But under the current rules at Health and Welfare, that her application was considered denied, and she had to wait for a year before she could reapply. So this clarifies if that situation occurs, you have 6 months to complete it. After that, Health and Welfare doesn't have to let it sit in their system. But if you do want to take it back up again, you may, and you may do that at any time. It's just abandoned, it's not denied. Some cleanup in 391106. Further down the page, you'll see a repeal of 391108. That one I know you all have heard quite a bit about. What that does is repeals childcare ordinances at the local level. In Idaho currently, there are 199 cities according to the 22 census. Of those 199, the state already handles daycare licensing for 190. So there are 9 cities that have additional ordinances. There's been lots of conversation about that. As Representative Furness said, there is already contemplation. There's a system. Everything is set up at Health and Welfare. They already do licensing. They already do inspections. They already do code inspections. They already do fire inspections. They have all of this. They also have contracts set up. So they are prepared to handle any additional workload and can talk about that. As you move through, beginning on page 4 and then on page 5 is where you will have heard a lot about as well. This is changes the ratios. So what it does is it takes the numbers out of statute. It does not eliminate ratios. You will see it says every daycare facility must have a child to staff ratio appropriate to ensure health, safety, and welfare of all children in attendance. So it doesn't eliminate ratios. it does take the numbers out of code, and it says you have to establish that, justify it in a policy, make it available to parents, and then stick to it. One note also is that this bill applies to all providers in the state. We have providers that choose to take federal subsidy money, and we have providers that don't. And this bill would apply to all of them. If a provider chooses to take federal subsidy money, there are likely going to be strings that are attached to the federal subsidy money. That is pretty much true, as those of you who've been around for a while know of. Most federal money comes with federal strings. This bill won't impact those federal strings, and they will likely have to still play by those rules. And so how that will play out, the next paragraph you'll see, the department needs to move the rules into statute by 2026. And so there will be a process. I expect that part of that process will be, how do we make sure that we have what we need for our providers who do want to take federal subsidy money, and that would likely include ratio numbers. Moving down on page 5, access to information. This updates how the department can give information to parents. Currently, they have to do it in the form of a pamphlet, and so they already reach out to parents in many different ways, and so the code just reflects their ability to do that. On page 6, it is still a misdemeanor to operate a daycare without a license. That is not going to change. The language that you see that's struck here says that you have to display your license, and under current law, it is a misdemeanor if you don't display it. So this just changes displaying of the license. It does not change whether or not you have to have one, does not change whether or not you have to have a background check or who has to have background checks. All of that remains in place. Similarly, for in-home daycares, if you are watching 4 or more children under current law, you must have a background check. You must pass that background check. This bill does not change any of that. It doesn't change the numbers or whether or not you need to pass it in order to operate. And if you operate without those things, it is still a misdemeanor. So none of that changes. And then at the end of the bill, there are a couple of code sections that are repealed as well. Those are, one of them corresponds with the repeal of the local ordinances. It relieves local governments, local jurisdictions from liability for issuing the licenses. So those two things are just two halves of the same whole. And then the second one is for health and welfare. They already contract out some of these services, and that cleanup allows them to continue to do that without worrying about it. So with that, I will stand for questions.
Committee, any questions? Senator Wintrow.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Ms. Haas. I'll make this quick because I see a lot of people want to testify. Just a couple questions. I have a lot, but I'm going to limit it to 2. When you talked about supervision, you said it relaxes, or that it tightens supervision, but I feel like the rule says it's sight and sound versus sight or sound. So I think, does this not relax the supervision requirements a little bit versus the rules?
Ms. Haas.
Senator Van Orden, Senator Wintrow, the rule does not have anything about how close to the child you need to be. The rule has no language about rendering immediate assistance, and that's the enhancement. That's my example to you is sight and sound and best practices. There are lots of national organizations that talk about this topic, and they all strongly encourage active supervision and have said that the old rule language, sight and sound, is not enough for active supervision. And so what this does is says sight or sound with immediate assistance, which is where you bring that part in. So I disagree with the characterization that it relaxes it, because I think it actually makes you more accessible.
Okay.
Follow-up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Ms. Haas, I see the green tag on today. So who are you representing today?
Ms. Haas.
Senator Van Orden, Senator Wintrow. I am here on behalf of myself, and we helped Representative Furness and Representative Ehart with the bill, And so I told him I'd be more than happy to answer questions. I'm more than happy to talk to you about our clients at any time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Haas, I apologize. I did,
Senator Wintrow.
thank you, Madam Chair and Ms. Haas. I did review the house, and it sounded like you did have a client there, but I guess not anymore.
Ms. Haas.
Senator Van Orden, Senator Wintrow, I'm happy to come talk to you about any of our clients at any time.
Thank you. Any more questions from the committee? Okay, we do have a number of people set to testify. I'm going to start down our list. First, let's see. I have Mary Lou Kinney. Okay, and each person has 2 minutes, and we have a hard stop about 4 o'clock, so because we have to be on the floor then. So please, if someone's already given the same comments that you want to give, you might want to yield your time to somebody else that's going to say something different. So welcome to committee.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Mary Lou Kinney from Boise, Idaho. I am representing myself, and I'm testifying against House Bill 243. I've worked in many roles in early childhood education over the course of my 40 years living in Idaho. One priority area has been working with others to improve our Idaho child care licensing law, and I've done this now in my retirement as well. This afternoon, I want to talk to you a little bit about 5 points on why I would vote no on this House Bill 243. And overall, it just does not really address the interests of children, parents, or child care providers. The first point I want to make is I know the majority of lawmakers still have not visited a child care program. Sometimes when we talk about ratios and group size, I can see that in the glaze. It kind of goes over your eyes. And I know that many of you, when we talk about ratios and group size, you would think about your experience in elementary school. This is very, very different in a child care program with babies, toddlers, mixed ages, groups of children. We didn't have enough time, and when this bill was presented, it was a very rushed bill, and the child care providers and early childhood people in our state were not notified or asked to contribute. So I apologize, Madam Chair and members of the committee, that we were not able to take you to a child care program that either in, and we do this, either in your district or in Boise if we don't have the time, and we haven't had time to do that. And we have found over the years that really gives you an understanding of what ratios and group size are all about. So I apologize for that. The second point is that it is really, really important for you to understand that the customer of child care are children.
Ms. Kinney, could you close your remarks, please?
Oh.
Thank you.
And so it's very important for you to realize that, and to also realize that when a parent goes to look for child care, they're thinking there's something there as far as restrictions, as far as health and safety. And just from my own experience, coming at the end of 1977, we came to, my husband and I were both teaching. We went to look for child care, quality, affordable child care. And it came to me when I was going to a restaurant that I go to a restaurant and there's capacity stated.
Excuse me,
health and
ma'am.
welfare.
You're going a little over your time,
Okay.
please. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And I'll stand for questions later.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, next we have Christine Tiddens. Welcome to the committee. Identify yourself, and then the time's yours.
Thanks, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Christine Tiddens. I'm the Executive Director of Idaho Voices for Children. And much like the sponsor's stated intent, we are interested in increasing access to quality care. However, House Bill 243 falls short of this intent at the expense of children's safety. Of particular concern to us is Section 6, subsection 4 regarding ratios. The bill strikes Idaho's current child-to-staff ratio from statute and rule, and it replaces it with language that puts the responsibility of establishing ratios in the hands of individual providers to decide what they think is best. There is plenty of research showing that if ratios become too flexible or are not followed, children experience increased rates of abuse, neglect, and fatalities. And I believe we'll hear a story here in a little bit of where this happened in a childcare business that had 11 small children under the care of one adult. So stripping these key safety standards from law opens the door to operators and bad actors who cut corners to save costs. And in a childcare setting, cutting corners result in babies being put into harm's way. Considering that Idaho already ranks last in the nation for childcare ratio regulation, why would we roll standards back even further in law? Why are we racing forward with something that hasn't been fully studied, and that child well-being experts oppose, especially knowing that there's a chance a child could suffer? Instead of passing this experiment into law, I urge you to put together a committee to study the child care shortage solutions and the impact of child care ratio deregulation on kids, businesses, and the full economy. And then let's come back next year and together work on passing the recommended solutions. So please oppose House Bill 243. This is not the answer to our childcare crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Senator Wintrow, just one question. We're pretty short on time, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Ms. Tiddens, you got my attention there as far as not necessarily passing this bill, but you have recommendations going forward. Talk a little bit about what you see that being. Were you consulted? How many stakeholders were at the table when we did this bill that you know of? Were you a part of it? And what could we do maybe moving forward to strike some better balance? So we're looking at supporting business, but also not at the harm or cost of the kids' safety, right?
Ms. Tiddens, make it very brief because we have a lot of people on this.
Chairman and Senator Wintrow, really quick, I don't know of a single organization involved in the welfare of children, child care providers, or parents that were consulted before this bill came forward. We have looked at solutions for the last several years. For example, the legislature passed in 2022 the Workforce Development Council's Idaho Child Care Expansion Grants, and already those have expanded an additional 2,000 seats for children, so it is working.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, committee, next we have Kathy Greismeyer. Welcome to committee.
Thank
Please
you.
State your name and the time is yours.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kathy Grismeyer. I'm the Director of Policy and Government Affairs with the City of Boise, and I'm here today to testify in opposition to House Bill 243. 2 points I want to emphasize during my time up here. One, I think that there's a misconception about this idea that in order to incentivize business to be successful in the childcare space, you need to deregulate and in doing so remove safety parameters. That is something that the city has really strived to find that right balance, and in response to feedback and concerns raised by childcare providers in Boise, in particular in-home childcare providers, the city has worked over the last 2 years to enact a number of reforms and innovations to help incentivize these businesses to stay open, including offering a property tax rebate for in-home care providers up to $500 credit back on your property tax bill to the city. We've worked to provide child care worker incentive pay using the city's ARPA money to help keep child care staff in the workforce. When we updated our zoning code, we worked to include a number of in-home care providers allowed in residential areas by right without having to come before planning and zoning to help make it easier for those businesses to open. We've reduced licensing, consolidated applications, waived fees for first-time licensees. So I think there are a number of creative and innovative ways that government can help incentivize business creation without restricting or removing safety. The other piece I really want to emphasize is we are the largest workforce center hub in the state. As one of the 9 cities that licenses child childcare in Idaho. We have over 200 facilities in Boise, close to 19,000 workers. It is really unclear to me with a fiscal note of zero how the department is planning to bring on all of these licensed facilities into its care when it comes into place July 1st. I worry that there will be a child care cliff without a transition about how these city licensed facilities go into state capacity. How does that jeopardize some of their federal funds? And we already know that the city plays a large enforcement and oversight role. In fact, the department over the last 2 years has already sent to Boise through its 211 care line over 100 complaints that they've asked us to investigate, in addition to what we receive locally. So for these reasons, would ask that you please hold House Bill 243 in committee, and I'm happy to answer any questions quickly.
Thank you. Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next I have on this list, I don't have her on this list, so I think I saw her on this list. Yeah. I don't have her on that dial. I can't do her on Zoom when she's on. Okay, next I have Matt Hunter. Welcome to committee.
Thank
Please
you, Senator.
identify yourself. You came all the way from Pocatello. So.
Yeah, Matt Hunter, President and CEO of the Pocatello-Chubbuck Chamber of Commerce, an organization whose vision is to help business thrive. We are opposed to this legislation, and I'll just speak to two reasons why. The main one was ratios, which has already been talked about, but I really believe this legislation will sacrifice the safety and security of our children. And that sort of speaks to the ratio thing, but it really is our main opposition. The other thing is local control. We elect people in our community that manage this stuff for us. If we don't like the way they manage it, if Boise doesn't like what's going on, if Pocatello doesn't like what's going on, elect other people to do it. And I really believe this is a local control issue, should not be handled by the legislature. If you want to set some statewide minimum stuff, fine, be happy to. But local cities, communities should be able to control this at the local level. And that's all I really have for you today.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being with us. Okay, next I have Mary Ruck. Is she in the other room, I wonder? Okay. Next, we have on our list Mark Kirby. Welcome to committee. You have 2 minutes. Please identify yourself, and the time is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee. My name is Mark Kirby. I'm testifying today in opposition of House Bill 243, and I am representing myself, but more importantly, my nephew, whom I never got to meet, and his parents, Austin and Kelly Emery. There is a daycare problem in Idaho, one that needs addressed through the appropriate solutions, but House Bill 243 is not that solution. Let me talk to you for a moment about a real daycare crisis in Idaho. On the morning of June 10th last year, my sister-in-law, Kelly, dropped her 2 young children, 2-year-old daughter Mila and 11-week-old son, Logan, off at a daycare facility in Homedale, Idaho. She was headed back to work. That afternoon, she received a call saying something was terribly wrong. When she got to the daycare facility, she was escorted to a back bedroom where she saw her son, Logan, lying on a bed, deceased by asphyxiation. My nephew, who I never got to meet. An investigation into this tragic incident found the child-to-staff ratio exceeded the current limits set by Idaho law, and the daycare provider was negligent in not following safe sleeping practices and supervision requirements. HB 243 is attempting to repeal current child-to-staff ratios and reduce supervision requirements, both of which, if properly followed, may have prevented the death of my nephew Logan. A 2024 study by West Virginia University ranks Idaho as the second least restrictive state in the nation when it comes to child care regulations. Further deregulating child care statutes is not the way to address the shortage. It feels very experimental in nature. I strongly oppose this bill as written and do not want any other Idaho family to experience what my family has suffered. Consider how much differently you might think if what happened to Logan Stewart Emery happened to your son, grandson, brother, nephew, or cousin. Please vote no on House Bill 243.
Thank you. Questions? Senator Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kirby, is your sister-in-law here?
Mr. Kirby.
Madam Chair, Senator Harris, she is not. However, my brother-in-law, Austin Emery, is here, sitting right back there.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Harris. Thank you. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Sabrina Dunn. Welcome to committee.
Thank you.
Please state your name and then the time is yours.
Hello, my name is Sabrina Dunn, and I am the owner of a small in-home child care center in Kuna, Little Beans. I strongly oppose this bill. Child care is my passion, my career, and what I plan on doing with the rest of my life. I started as a preschool teacher at a lovely school in Meridian, and I soon worked my way up to directing a child care center in Boise. While a director, I worked 50 to 55 hours a week, making less than minimum wage. I eventually received a settlement from the Department of Labor proving that I was underpaid. The child care center that I worked at used me and my passion and spread me as thin as possible. While I believe the intentions were good in the beginning, money quickly clouded the views of the owners, and the safety of the children was no longer the #1 priority. I then decided that I would advocate for the child care industry and open my own center. I spent some time that summer substituting at centers all across the Treasure Valley. I've met so many amazing, kind, and loving teachers, but they all have something in common. Every center I've been to is severely understaffed. Underpaid teachers are put in charge of as many children as legally possible, leading to abuse, burnout, and an inability for centers to take care of the children they promise to. I have worked with the City of Kuna as well as Idaho Stars to make sure I am providing the most legal, safe, and quality childcare possible. While this process has been long and sometimes tedious, I know more than others how important it is. This bill will directly lead to injuries and even deaths. I understand freedom. I understand wanting to give the decisions directly to child care centers, but the actual truth of the matter is child care centers will push the ratio. Please, please know that if this bill passes, the children of Idaho will suffer. I love Idaho. I love living here. I love every child that I have taken care of over the years. Please try to understand that child care is a real and passionate career with passionate individuals who live their whole lives to take care of the children of others. The solution doesn't lie through less regulations, but more. If you want there to be more access to quality childcare in Idaho, this is not the answer. I will continue to take care of your children and love them as my own. All we can do is speak up, so I'm here today, begging you to please consider the truth and voices of my fellow childcare workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Okay, next we have Roger Shai on video here. If I can bring it up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
please
and the
identify
committee.
yourself and the time is yours.
My name is Roger Shai. I'm the Chief of Police for the Pocatello Police Department, and I am against House Bill 243. In 2024, our licensing officer processed 576 daycare license applications. Of those, we denied only 6 licenses. 4 for suicidal ideations and mental health concerns, and 2 for being on the Idaho Child and Neglect Central Registry. The denials that we make are not taken lightly and are justified. One example of a denial occurred in 2023 was for an individual who had a long history of drug abuse and mental health concerns. She appealed the denial, and her license was ultimately went before the city council, where she expressed that she still struggled with substance abuse and mental health concerns. Ultimately, her appeal was also denied. Further, our licensing officer conducts annual inspections of daycares in Pocatello. In doing so, we have found that providers are happy to comply and actually look to our licensor as a valuable resource in navigating child care ownership. Another incident that occurred in 2023 highlights the importance of the maximum staff-to-child ratios. The center in question was repeatedly reported to be overstaffed ratios were concerns of physical abuse at the facility. And during the investigation, we obtained video from the center and found the staff regularly over maximum allowed ratios. The center was often chaotic, and the center staff was spread very thin. Ultimately, we discovered videos of physical abuse in the center. As a result, 5 staff members, including the business owner, were all charged, and their licenses revoked, and the business license was pulled. This bill is being sold as a parents' right bill, but will only further hurt low-income families. Families who can afford high care child care will continue to receive it, while those who cannot will be forced to look for lower-cost options, such as individuals providing care for 6 or less children without a license and proper inspections of their homes to ensure that they meet all health and safety and fire standards. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you.
Okay, next I have Jennifer Serta in person. Welcome to committee. Please identify yourself for the record, and then the time is yours.
Hi, my name is Jenny Serta, and thank you very much for the opportunity to testify today. Since most child care providers are working at this time, I'm sharing the testimony of my friend Marcia in opposition to House Bill 243. Here's what she had to say. I've been working in child care for 18 years now, and I have seen firsthand how important all the regulations are for our children's safety, especially with infants, where it is 1 teacher to 6 infants as young as 6 weeks old. You can't meet all the needs of a baby when you have 6 by yourself. Imagine if there was no set ratio at all. You only have 2 hands. You can only feed, cuddle, and change 1 diaper at a time. And once they reach 2 years old, the ratio is 1 teacher to 8 kids. And 2-year-olds are crazy, according to Marcia. Sometimes they are biting or hitting, and they're going through so many developmental milestones in such a short period of time. Being by yourself to meet all 8 kids' needs is a hard feat. The standards that are currently in place really should be the bare minimums. I'm praying that HB 243 does not go through for the safety of our kids. And as I was reflecting on this, I have twin nieces, and luckily they're high school seniors now. But when they were children, every time I would see them, I would wonder how both of their parents did it together, 2 parents, 2 kids. It is a lot when you have small children. So if you've ever seen somebody out to dinner with twins, you know what I'm talking about. I'm sure you've wondered the same thing. And allowing centers to set their own ratios means families with fewer resources will be accepted to accept less safe childcare for their children. I don't believe this is what any of us wants. This bill will exacerbate the childcare crisis. It will, the jobs in childcare, which are already underpaid, will become even more stressful and undesirable, while also jeopardizing the safety and development of our children. Please vote no on House Bill 243.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, thank you for being with us. Okay, next we have Allison Welch. Thank you for being with us. Please identify yourself, then the time is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me testify. My name is Allison Welch. I live in Twin Falls, and I'm representing Mormon Women for Ethical Government, or MWEG for short. IMWEG is a grassroots organization dedicated to building a more peaceful, just, and ethical world through advocacy and empowerment. Our Idaho members are true cross-partisan coalition. We understand and agree that there is a child care workforce shortage in our state, and we applaud your efforts to address this issue. However, we oppose House Bill 243 because we believe that laws exist to protect the most vulnerable among us, including our children. Numerous surveys show that parents prioritize safety, trust for the provider, and affordability when considering childcare options. Relaxing staffing ratios may increase affordability, but it decreases both safety and trust. Requiring a reasonable ratio of children to adults is critical to keeping children safe. Parents work hard so they can provide for their children, and their children need to be cared for by caregivers, providers who are not overextended. This is especially important because many children in childcare are nonverbal and cannot yet advocate for themselves. It is upon us to advocate for them. Additionally, research shows that keeping the adult-to-child ratio small leads to better child outcomes. Children gain a greater vocabulary and school readiness skills when more attention is available. Licensed care should give parents peace of mind that their children's developmental needs are being met. Caring for too many children at one time is not only more dangerous for the child, but also the caregiver. As a mother of 4 and as a mental health professional, I know that caregiver burnout is real. Eliminating required ratios is a step backwards for both children and caregivers. We ask you to prioritize the safety and vote no on House Bill 243. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no questions. Thank you for being with us. Okay, next we have Chris Cargill on video. Good afternoon, Mr.
Madam Chair, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. I can hear you. The time's yours. Please identify yourself.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Chris Cargill, the president of Mountain States Policy Center, and I appreciate the invitation to address you this afternoon. House Bill 243 caught the attention of our researchers for several reasons. Among those was the desire to find new ways to make it easier for people to open and continue operating childcare businesses in our state. This is a big deal across the nation, as you all know, but even in more so in states like Idaho and Utah that have larger families and therefore have bigger needs. We all know the statistics. There are about 250,000 children in Idaho who are between the ages of 5 and 14 who likely need some sort of childcare. It is true that in some families that can be mom or dad, maybe grandma or grandpa, but too many families don't have those options, and that forces families into childcare situations that may be sketchy or outrageously expensive or both. Other states have sought to rectify this situation by simply adding on to the burden, making it more difficult for families to find a quality childcare provider. We're glad that Idaho has not followed that path. The reason why we're excited about House Bill 243 is because it takes a free market approach, just as Representative Furness mentioned. Regulation is not necessarily a synonym for safety. I want to make sure I underline that. Regulation is not necessarily a synonym for safety. I've had conversations with folks in the past who had a strong desire to open a child care facility, had the desire that you've heard from many of the folks who have testified today, but they just didn't want to have to jump through the bureaucratic hoops to do so. So this legislation puts you all as legislators back in the driver's seat instead of depending on a patchwork of laws from Boise to Coeur d'Alene, and it does not eliminate ratios or put children in danger. We believe that if the legislation is passed, you are likely to see an increase in the number of new and quality child care providers in Idaho, and because more would be licensed, more children would be protected. I thank you for your time this afternoon and happy to stand for any questions.
Hey, any questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Let's see. Next I have Sherry Waddell. Welcome to committee. Please identify yourself for record, and the time is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senators. My name is Sherry French Waddell. I stand before you today representing myself, my 1-year-old grandbaby, and Idaho's youngest and most vulnerable citizens. With the urgent plea to not pass the child care ratio facility deregulation, House Bill 243. This legislation puts children, our most vulnerable children, at risk. As we saw earlier, we had a death. As a child care provider for over 20 years, I was a child care provider for over 20 years, experienced in Caldwell, Idaho. I cannot even state to you how important it is for the ratios. My large child care facility used Idaho health and welfare standards. If we didn't have those guidelines, if we didn't have those laws, how would a child care provider just starting out know exactly how many children per adult could actually be cared for? When parents visit Idaho Stars to search for child care, they rely on the information. The transparency is crucial and critical. There's an example of one center I attached to my statement today. Currently, child care centers undergo inspections only once a year. Without state-enforced ratios, health and welfare will see an increase of overcrowding centers, overworked child care centers, overworked child care workers, and preventable accidents, injuries, and even deaths. Leaving the ratios up to discussion of individual centers is a reckless gamble on children's lives. I urge you and implore you strongly to reject this bill. Idaho's youngest lives depend on it. They are voiceless. We are the responsible ones. Director of Child Care for over 20 years, Caldwell, Idaho, Sherry French Waddell.
Thank you,
Madam Chair.
Excuse me, we don't clap in here. Thank you. Okay, next we have Nicholas Kleinworth. Welcome to committee. Please identify yourself, and then the time is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Nicholas Kleinworth, and I'm the Policy Director at the Idaho Freedom Foundation. I'm here to testify in favor of House Bill 243. The latest available data estimates Idaho's child care shortage to be nearing 21,000 seats. For many parents, and perhaps even some of you on the committee, this statistic has a tangible impact. It is clear the status quo is not meeting the needs of the growing needs of our state. So far, this has been mostly addressed by subsidizing or investing in the child care industry. But millions in borrowed COVID dollars were supposed to invest in the expansion of our child care capacity for more children. But as demand continues to grow, costs continue to rise. For decades, we have provided subsidies through Idaho Child Care Program, even expanding benefits and eligibility. Idaho planned for the program to cost $56 million in the upcoming fiscal year, but this value is projected to go up by roughly $22 million, and that is over budget, before the department took action to get costs under control. The ICCP's design even incentivizes providers to raise their prices, thereby exacerbating problems that it was supposed to solve. The answer is not more subsidies and funding for the child care industry. The answer is actually more deregulation and flexibility within the industry. This legislation provides avenues for Idaho's child care industry to innovate and rise to the challenge before them. It stops onerous requirements from both state and local governments, which do not truly lend to the safety of children in the state, but have resulted in increased costs. Finally, it makes several overdue clarifications to how facilities can manage the safety of children. Committee, with this, I respectfully request your support of House Bill 243 as a way to provide real solutions to Idaho's child care crisis. And with that, I'll stand for any questions if there's time.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Okay, we are limited on time. I'm going to let Representative Furness please make your closing remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've appreciated the testimonies that have been here. I have 5 children, and I love them all, and I recognize the love in this room. These individuals truly do love children, and I appreciate that. This bill is about deregulation. It has ratios. It is set by the child care. They are licensed. They have limits on those licenses. They will be checked by health and welfare. We're not leaving the daycares out there to run themselves. This bill is about increasing workforce numbers by increasing child care spots. In JFAC, every agency that we audit or we go over has vacancies in it. Every business that we talk to from our constituents have trouble finding workers. Currently, a lack of workers in Idaho is prohibiting growth, it's stymieing growth, it's probably the biggest deterrent to growth and prosperity in Idaho. I would say that this bill lets the market dictate those child care ratios. I would say that the parents can make those choices. If you walk into a daycare with your child and you see 12 little babies on the floor, you're probably not going to leave your baby. I would hope that they could decide what's best for them. I find it interesting that child care centers are currently understaffed or have seen some understaffing, and we see results in child care. I saw a stat that I didn't tell you that currently 37%, there's a 37% turnover in child care facilities due to overburdensome, into just too many kids in the child care, and they get burnt out. This is an opportunity for businesses to start, for moms to start businesses, not be overregulated, and to help with this industry. I would implore you to send 243 to the floor with a do pass recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Senator Lenny?
Sorry.
Oh, it wasn't for a question, it was for a motion.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay. Motion's in order.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we send House Bill 243 to the floor with a due pass recommendation.
So moved by Senator Letty, seconded by Senator Kaiser to send 243 to the floor with a due pass recommendation. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So a lot of reading the bill and then hearing a lot of the testimony we've heard today, without getting too detailed, I suppose, it feels like we've been presented with a lot of false dichotomies and a lot of assumptions. For example, I heard several times this is eliminating ratios, when on page 5, line 9, 10, and 11, it talks about establishing ratios for the health, safety, and welfare of all children. I've heard that, that cities and bureaucrats saying that they know how to run a daycare better than a daycare owner reminds me of, it'd be like a bureaucrat telling a farmer the best way to milk a cow. I think the people doing the work are in a better spot to decide how to do that than city bureaucrats. And I think this is less of a child care problem and it's more of an entrepreneurship problem. And by passing this bill, I think we're going to open up a lot of solutions. So that's why I made the motion. And yeah, I'm going to be a yes on this, obviously.
Senator Kaiser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to review some of the things that I read here in this bill. And as a former police officer and father of 3, I have great emphasis on safety. And I think that this bill emphasizes safety. I read that a parent or provider must be within sight and normal hearing range of a child. It talks about Fire inspection for fire safety by a district official. Emphasizes health and safety inspection by a proposed facility. Continued compliance and re-inspection. Maintain compliance with safety and health requirements. Re-inspected as determined necessary by the department. Must have criminal history checks. Backgrounds. It says safety standards. Adequate fire alarms. Functional telephone. I see firearms and other weapons locked in a container. Guidelines for fence and restricted access to pools, hot tubs, ponds. There must be at least an adult on the premises that have certification in pediatric rescue, breathing, and first aid treatment. Certified instructor. Adult must be present at all times. And finally, I do see daycare facilities shall establish and maintain child and staff ratio appropriate to ensure health, safety, and welfare of all children. So I am an aye vote.
Senator Blaylock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To speak to the motion, I understand that I'm always a fan of making the process to license these types of places easier, and it looks like there's a lot of stuff in this bill that will do that. We obviously have a shortage of childcare in our state. The hang up for me is on the removing of the ratios, because it sounds like it's obviously a concern for people in my city, and then obviously we heard it here today as well. When I think about even just what Senator Kaiser talked about, the different standards that we set in here, that we tell them if you have a body of water that you need to have a fence that's at least 4 feet. Well, why not just say a fence and let them set the footage, right? That's exactly what we're doing with the ratios. We set standards in law to address bad actors within industries. We don't set it to say this is what it should be. And to Senator Furness's point, the free market is working because the ratio for the youngest is 1 to 6, and he talked about how there's groups out there that they advertise that they were 1 in 4, if I remember right. And so the free market does work. We're just setting the standard, which I think is which is a good thing. We do it within our foster care when we place children in homes. They have standards there for what those ratios should be. So I think there's a precedence for it. I think it's, especially if we're hoping that this will open up the door for moms to open up in-home care centers that helps give them those guidelines of like, okay, here's the max. So for that reason, I'd like to propose a substitute motion to send House Bill 243 to the 14th order of business for possible amendments with the intention of just bringing back the ratios that the state had.
Second. Been moved and seconded to send House Bill 243 the floor to the 14th order. Senator Harris, would you like to speak to the motion?
Can I speak to the first motion, Madam Chair?
Yes, you may.
I will be voting no on the first motion, the original motion. I just, listened to the testimonies from the people that came. There is a possibility that, as many have said, that this bill raises the ratio. Our kids are our most precious resource in the state of Idaho, and I think this bill puts them at risk, and therefore I would be opposing the original motion. As for the second motion, the substitute motion, I'm still mulling it around, but anyway, just comment.
Okay. Senator Lenny.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know, I guess I could ask Representative Furness if, am I allowed to ask Representative Furness a question briefly?
Yes, you may. Or would you like to direct it?
It's a short question. Well, I can just throw it out there. I was curious if what your thoughts are on sending this to the 14th order, if you were consulted about that, or
Representative Furness.
Madam Chair, Senator Lenny, I did receive a phone call asking about the 14th order. I would prefer not to send it there. I think it's a good bill. I think it needs to just go and be and heard on the floor.
Okay,
Thank you. That's all.
Senator Wintrow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate Senator Blaylock's description, especially of the fence size. That was really struck something for me. But because folks didn't get to testify, could you share how many people did sign up, how many opposed, how many are for? I think that could also help as we make this. And
there were almost 40 people that signed up to testify, and most of them, the majority of them except 2, were against the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess I would just follow up that I would feel more comfortable doing that amendment and then being able to talk to the bill sponsor and others just to find some way to strike a balance to, I see some heads nodding, to strike a balance with some industry experts, and those would be childcare people, right? And to say, hey, can we consult a little bit about how to just strike a little balance so you're feeling good about promoting business, which we all want, but then not unintentionally harming, the safety standards for kids. But I think if we could talk about it a little, we might be able to find that balance, and then more people would be happy instead of feeling so, heartbroken one way or another, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Seeing none, we do have a substitute motion on the table.
Madam Chair, can I
Senator
request a
Lenny.
roll call vote, please?
Okay, we are voting now on the substitute motion to send Senate Bill 243 to the 14th order for possible amendments.
Senator Harris.
Aye.
Senator Zeiderveld. Senator Lenny. Senator Shippey. Senator Blaylock.
Yes.
Senator Kaiser. Senator Wintrow. Vice Chair Bjerke. Chair Van Orden. There are 4 ayes and 5 nays.
Motion fails. Next is our original motion to send Senate Bill 243 to the floor with a do pass recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Okay. I believe the ayes have it. Motion passes. Yes. Senator Harris, yes. Senator Wintrow, yes is a no. Senator Blaylock, recorded as a no. Okay, thank you. All right, committee, we're late for the floor and we are adjourned.
And Idaho Legislative Services Office. Additional funding is provided by the Idaho Public Television Endowment.